Welcome into the DGD Podcast. We are back, folks. Took a little bit of break to reset, right? It's the off season, quote unquote. But anyway, we are back, and Georgia is hotter than ever so far into June, and it really started in the end of May. But we're going to talk about that because Georgia's got a lot of recruiting momentum going. There's OVs going right now when we're recording this live. And the House settlement that we've been wondering finally got accepted. So we're going to give our quick instant reactions to that. First things first, we've got my guy Rye in the building from the Birdcage LLC. Rye, how are you doing tonight?
Doing well. Thanks for having me again, man. Got a lot to cover today.
Yeah, that's a fact. That is a fact. First things first, the show is brought to you by our friends over at Alumni Hall. Make sure that you go and get yourself some gear from Alumni Hall, right? You can go in stores in Athens, or you can go to dgdpod.com/alumni hall. And anything you buy on our website, 8% will go to the Classic City Collective on behalf of the DGD podcast. So do yourself a favor, get yourself geared up for the season. Hey, game times just got announced. We might even have to talk about that for a quick second. We're going to talk about that in a little bit. But get yourself geared up for our guys at Alumni Hall. Thanks, Alumni Hall, for sponsoring the show. Let's jump into this. Recruiting is popping. Right? That cannot be understated, right? OV started at the end of May, and boy, oh boy, it did not disappoint. I'm going to go off of this list. I'm going to list off these guys that either committed or shut their recruitment down since our last show. Folks, it's insane. First things first, high 4-star defensive back, Justice Fitzpatrick. That is the brother of Minka Fitzpatrick, by the way. Ryan Mosley, receiver from Carrollton. Graham Houston, it's an interior O-line from Buford. This name rings a bell. Carter Lucky, defensive line. That's the 5th Lucky in the Georgia legacy there. Brady Marchese, I hope I said that right, shut his recruitment down, all but flipped to Michigan, and then ends up shutting it down. Zyke Helton, another Carrollton Trojan, commits. Zachary Lewis, another interior offensive lineman. And then we have to respect this, but special teams, folks, it matters. Our guy Kobe, you know this. Number 1 kicker and the number 1 punter based off of Cole's kicking. I'm going to butcher this, but I'm going to give it the college try. Kicker Haran Zerakat, and then Wade Register. So that is, 9 recruits committed or shut down their recruitment for Georgia in a span of a couple weeks. Now, I got to ask you this, Ryan. What sticks out to you the most?
I would say what sticks out to me the most, I would have to say, is where we always wait to see what these kids are going to do around this time of year. Excuse me. And if you ever pay attention to how the recruiting cycle works, I would say Kirby literally is kind of like a fight. You're sizing up the competition. And the way that Kirby sizes up the competitions now that we have NIL involved, he's going to see what they're going to offer, and he counter offers for certain positions. But let's be honest, I don't think it was much to sell with this class because they're seeing that guys are consistently going to the NFL, and they're able to develop these guys to be prepared to start expeditiously as soon as they step foot on the NFL field. And if you look at the amount of first rounders we've had since we've won that national championship, and even before we won the national championship, when you saw a couple of guys were top round picks, and you're saying that we're churning out great talent, that is a hell of a selling point alone. So if I got to look at it, I think we flipped and switched places with Alabama, because Alabama was putting guys out at a clip like we were at one point, and now it's us putting guys out consistently every year since these national championship games, and we've pretty much become the kings of the SEC.
I will say, though, Bama's still going to continuously pump guys out into the league. I'm not going to discredit Bama in that regard, but Georgia has definitely taken an uptick with development and getting guys from the University of Georgia into the league. I mean, you saw it last NFL draft. Obviously, you're a Falcons guy, so you get Jalen Walker. I know you're ecstatic still, probably.
We got a couple of dogs right now. That's the funny part.
That's interesting. Maybe the Falcons are learning something. I don't know. I ain't gonna hold my breath on it though. But no, I mean, that's 14 guys in the draft, right? So when you look at these guys in recruitments that are shutting them down and committing, when I look at things, first things first, I'm looking at Justice Fitzpatrick, right? Georgia fans know the Fitzpatrick name, obviously, for Minkah being a safety at Alabama. But if you're not familiar, I would hope that if you're watching this show, you are familiar with it. But if you are not, I'll enlighten you. Coach Kirby Smart was the defensive coordinator when Minkah Fitzpatrick was at Alabama. So there's a really close connection there, so much so that I would imagine you sit there and take that coaching right there from him, and I think it was a done deal. I mean, he takes his official visit and then just commits, like, just on bam. The interesting part was what really kind of settled in was, there was talks of an official visit to Ohio State right after a commitment, but then cancels that official. So to me, that's kind of more of a reassuring thing, saying, hey, I'm sticking with Georgia on that one, right? But again, though, I'm sitting there looking at this too. Justice was a big get, especially with the secondary. So you look at you obviously Kirby with the relationships there, but I'm looking at this. I'm looking at this recruiting class so far. Keywords, because the secondary is not done in the 2026 class, folks. It's not. Yep. So I'm looking at Dante, Coach Dante, and a lot of people give this man grief early on. And as this class is starting to fill out from the recruiting standpoint, I feel like we need to kind of tip the cap. Because what we're doing at the corner spot is so far is pretty impressive. And it's not done either.
I'll say this, I gotta give a little pushback, not much, but this is my thing. When it comes to what we're having right now, and we talk about recruiting, I think that you're getting the guys in the building. That's great, and that's the first step. That's very key. Now, with you getting these guys in the building, you already got the first step done. How do you get to the second step? How do you get these guys to buy into the system as soon as they get through the door? How do you get these guys in proper shape? And I'm not saying physical shape. I'm talking about mental shape. Condition these guys mentally to be ready to take reps at any given notice, because we had situations where guys were being rotated like musical chairs at that corner spot last year with Daniel Harris, the gentleman who will remain unnamed after the Alabama game. It starts with an H and it has 1-2 on the jersey. I'll leave it like that. And then you look at how we were able to just gut through the season. And that's untypical of a Kirby Smart secondary. And I think Kirby really wanted the two positions I really believe that Kirby wanted to make sure that were secure was the cornerback spot and the safety spot and the receiver spot. So at this corner spot, the names look good on paper, but let's take it off the paper and put it on the field and see how that develops.
Yeah, no, I think that's the key, right? But I think before we sit there and push them to the field, right, you got to get them into your class. You got to get them signed and got to get them to the University of Georgia. I think these guys that we're getting in these, in the secondary class, I think one, they're going to benefit because I do think that we're going to be losing several defensive backs, right, next year. And I think that's going to benefit because you need to replace them. And so what feels like it might be a heavy class, there's a reason for it, right? So when you look at Justice Fitzpatrick, right, and then him being a corner, right, I want to say, you need all these guys, right? So when I look at it again, I'm sitting there looking at the names that we've got and the names that we can be getting, right? Like I said, you got Justice Fitzpatrick. That's a 6-foot corner, about 6'1". Jordan Smith is a 6'2" safety, right? Zach Fort, smaller kind of, I would say probably a nickel, right?
Yeah.
Based off of the projection there. You look at these names, Keelan Jones, and we're not even done yet. It's not over, especially in the secondary class. You need those bodies. You do.
And I'm with you on that when you talk about stacking up depth, because the one thing that you never know, and we found this out last year, the injury bug hit us last year. Got a lot of guys hurt, a lot of key guys hurt, even though it wasn't in the secondary, but we saw what musical chairs look like on the offensive line. And I think Kirby doesn't want to get caught with his pants down with the secondary, because you got a guy to leave in the portal. Now you have guys that ended up moving on to the NFL with Dan Jackson and company. And now you have to replenish that depth. The 2 veteran guys in that secondary right now, 3 veteran guys in that secondary right now that's had playing time. You look at KJ Bolden, you look at Dallin Everett, and then you also have to throw into the equation Janelle Aguero. Those 3 guys are going to be critical this year because of the experience they've had in this defense, and they know it. The question is, how do they get the next 2 members? We're thinking Maddox might be the starter at the other safety position from what we're thinking. Maybe it might change. You never know.
Yeah.
How do we get him? But how do we get him to come along? We don't know who's going to be that number 2, whether it's going to be Harris or whether it's going to be Robinson at that number 2.
I still, as it stands right now, I'm gonna be under the assumption that you rotate those 2 at cornerback 2. I mean, when you've got that kind of battle going, right, and both of them are good enough to play, right, I think you have to do that. But again, you brought up the good point, right, with regards to the safety spot. Don't forget about Ja'Cory Thomas, right? But there's a reason also why you brought in 3 safeties, right? You brought in Maddox, you bring in Zion Branch, and then you bring in the transfer from Miami, right? Maybe a little bit more of a longer term play there for the guy with Miami, right? But nonetheless, though, you look at Zion, even in spring practice, has heard some good things there. And then, Maddox the same way. So you need those bodies for one, right? It'll be interesting to see what happens. But again, after the season, you talked about the injury bug. You didn't even bring up that the portal giveth and the portal taketh away.
Yep.
So
definitely didn't mention too heavy on that portal, because we know that's going to happen every year. Every year for everybody.
Correct. But again, when you look at the recruiting class that we're talking about, right, especially in the secondary so far, that it plays a part, because you don't know who can go to the portal, who will go to the portal. So you've got to get that situated. You got to get it right. But again, you sit there and look at this too. I want to kind of transition away from the defensive side. I want to move to the offensive side of the ball, and we'll go to the big nasties real quick, right? Ooh. I mean, when you look at it, doesn't sound pretty, okay? It doesn't. But when you look at the names that we talked about, Zyke Helton, Graham Houston, and Zach Lewis, to me, all of those guys play interior, right? But people forget that you can't just get 10, 15 tackles and just play them across the line. Just can't do that. But it's also interesting to see. I think you look at Zach Lewis. I think Zach Lewis might project more of a center, or maybe Graham Houston too, either one. But I think you've got your guards. Now the question comes into play, right? You lose on Cantwell, right? Mm-hmm. Ian Nacho is probably going somewhere else besides Georgia too, right? Which to me leaves Ekene Igboka, right? I feel like Georgia hosted him this past week, and I think Georgia hit it out of the park. And honestly, I mean, for those that pay attention to this stuff, On3 did their RPM for him to come to Georgia. And I mean, honestly, being up in this area, I think it makes too much sense for him to do that. I think he does come to Georgia. He ends up in the class. I mean, he's got the Nigerian, right? The Nigerian bloodline, along with his brother playing at Georgia too. I know going to Clemson, that first opening week of official visits kind of makes a lot of people sweat with how Clemson's been notorious for pushing kids to commit on those visits. But again, I think you look at that regard, and I think Akeem can kind of finish up that offensive line class. You probably will get a fifth guy possibly, because you're about to lose a lot again. So, you know, the names that are already committed don't have that flash and pizzazz of a Cantwell or Iheanacho. But you need those types of guys. And if you worry about the rankings, I think you're getting yourself carried away too much.
Yeah, I mean, and here's the question. Can Stacy Searles get out of the doghouse when it comes to developing this talent? Because, okay, you're bringing in guys, StreamYard to StreamYard, and I apologize about that. I'll just say this, because I'm going to try to get back on screen. When you look at it, can Stacy Searles turn this thing around? You're the same thing we said about Dante. You're pulling in guys that might be good with the eye test, because we also know that the radar for the ranking system isn't always accurate, because, again, you look at guys that might be a 2 and 3 star, but they literally play like a 5-star. You know what I mean? So maybe the eye does not lie. Eye in the sky doesn't lie. And my question is can Stacy Searles get these guys to buy in and actually play football at a high productive level? That's my question, because Stacy doesn't have the greatest track record either. So this is his chance of redemption as well. But I think as a recruiter, I think he's very elite in being able to spot talent. And I think he's had some great talent that he's put in the NFL. But it's just, I feel, in my opinion, this has nothing to do with your opinion on that. I want to make sure I put that out. I think that this is a year that he has to make a statement with his offensive line group. That's just my opinion.
Well, I mean, you take last season, right? And, you know, I've heard between Georgia fans, man, that, you know, we saw the ending of the Matt Luke recruiting classes, right? And I get there is some justification to that, right? Obviously, there's no mistaking the fact that the offensive line play was nowhere close to what we should and expect it to be last season. And that right there brings out the doubters and the haters due to the fact that the same stuff was going on at UNC before he came to Georgia. The 2 years he was at UNC, they gave up 80-some sacks in 2 seasons. So, you know, there's issues there at the offensive line. And when the expectation is now that you're at Georgia, you're expected to recruit elite level prospects across the line and assemble that. And in 2024, I was thoroughly impressed. I was extremely excited about the 23 and the 24 class. But, you know, at the same time, now you're looking at it, you're building up the interior. And the offensive line doesn't get enough talking until you have these issues. So they need to be discussed, because we could not run the football last season. Whether it be the running backs or the offensive line, you couldn't run the football. So I'm going to put both of them there.
Agreed.
But we're talking offensive line at this point. But I think you get a can of Boko, and you wrap up a good part of the tackle spot. And then from there, I think you look at it in that sense that, right, the offensive line with the 2024 cycle should be good to go. But in the meantime, also, right, you look at the receivers, right? You got Brady Marchese. That was a little bit of an interesting situation, right? Yeah. The fact that Georgia was able to pull that one back and get him to shut down his recruitment, it's a big deal because there's a lot of speculation that that you could lose a commit to, Miami or whoever, or USC or whoever, in Vance Spafford. There's been talks and rumblings about that. And so getting Brady to shut down his recruitment is a lot bigger than people realize.
You're definitely absolutely right. That was huge.
And then top that with Ryan Mosley before that. And now the receiving core, you're getting pumped up for that. So,
but now and I think what helped us out, I hate the fact that we struggled in that game. I mean, in the passing game last year. But I'm going to be honest with you on this. I think Mike Bobo did change some things. I'm still on my stance with him. So I change until he changes it. I stand firm on that. But I'll say this about Coach Bobo, and I got to give him this. He showed that he'll throw the ball last year. And even though some of the offense was still predictable, the one thing you can say is, okay, we threw the ball 30, 40 times a game at times last year, and receivers just couldn't catch the ball. That's not on coach. You got to make the plays. Opportunities are being presented. The question is, what can these receivers do with the opportunities when they're there? That's the key.
Yeah.
Because now that you got CJ Wiley, Talon Taylor, you got Sokovie White, you have Zachariah Branch, Noah Thomas,
Kobe Young.
And Kobe Young. I mean, I'm just naming a few. And I got to throw Jeremy Bell in there as well, Clinch County boy. So when you have weapons like this, here's my question. How are you going to use these weapons in the passing game? Because I understand, I know the tunnel screen is there, but here's the thing. We got to open up that playbook and we got to let them horses run. We got to let them run, and we got to let them use their speed, their skill set to really throw folks off. Because let's be honest, the tunnel screen is nice, but you can't run it every other possession that you have, unless it's working. But you can't do that when you have the type of horses that we have that can go get the football.
Well, I think another thing too, I mean, not to bring back too much from last season into this conversation right now, but it's kind of one of these necessary evils, I guess. You look at the situation, and the quarterback situation is going to change some of this too, right? I think the drops, especially in the Notre Dame game, it felt like the summation of our season, right? When you look at,
don't remind me of that.
I have to do this. I have to do this.
No.
When you watch Dylan Bell drop a wide open pass, and I mean wide open, at that point, it being on the national stage, it's like, hey, we've seen this all year. You ain't telling me nothing new at that point, right? And so now that it's a new year, you're a lot of your receivers are gone, right? Draft, some of the portal, whatever. So you start fresh, right? So you bring in freshmen, like you said, some of those names that you listed, and it gets a shot in the arm, Yep. Now let's see if the vaccine actually worked, if you will. But again, when I look at the receivers, the personnel change is one thing, but I'm looking at the schematics. I think, but I understand the screen game, but was that just a lack of confidence and lack of separation being created? Because the receivers were not getting space. They were not creating space and creating that separation. Yeah, when we have to look back at it, Ladd McConkey was one of the best receivers we had at creating space. And it was always open. It made things look and feel aesthetically pleasing when that happens.
Mm-hmm.
When you don't have that separation and you tie that into the fact that you don't have a true 50-50 ball winner, things aren't going to look pretty. You can't do the passes and the scheming that you may want because you don't have the bodies that create space or win 50-50 balls consistently enough. So you look at the screens, that's getting the ball out of the hands fast, partially an O-line problem. That's how you mask a bad offensive line protection.
Yep.
But it's all these different things. And so you look at Gunnar Stockton, you look at the new personnel at the receiving core, bring in the tight ends, right? The tight ends staying the same. You only feel like you got deeper at that position.
Yeah, that was
the excuses are nowhere close to what you can justify this season. Should not be an excuse. It just shouldn't.
If you can't win with all this talent that you've stacked up on this offense in the passing game, you know what? He got to go. You don't have to say. I'll say it. And here's my thing. I'm not putting last season on Coach Bobo like that. I'm not, because you gave guys opportunities. They were not able to capitalize on that. Injuries hurt us. So you get a mulligan. And here's the other reason why Coach gets a mulligan. He helped lead us to the SEC championship game with a wounded offense, ladies and gentlemen, and a horrible receiving corps. There's no way around it. I love the Dawgs, but I have to be honest and candid with the comments that I'm using when it comes to that. That right there should get you a mulligan. You won the conference. Yeah, you hear fans say, oh, well, it was because Bama lost to Oklahoma. It doesn't matter. Guess what? We got in there. We handled our business.
You did what you could control.
Exactly. And you handled business, and you won the 2024 SEC crown. Now, what you have to do, you have a ton of weapons now in that wide receiver room. Gunnar Stockton showed. Now, we can't judge him off of 6 quarters of football. And most people still don't know much about him, which plays into Georgia's advantage because they don't have tape on him early. Now, later in the season, when they have tape on him and they see his tendencies, that changes. But I'll say probably the first 6 games of this season, Gunnar Stockton should be lighting folks up at this point.
I'm telling you this, and there's a lot of doubt coming around the Georgia program right now. And a lot of it stems from the quarterback position, right?
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned the 6 quarters of football, and that's inarguable. That's not up for debate. That's literally what it is. But when I look at it, it's not like he struggled against nobodies. You played Texas in the SEC title game in the second half and won that game. Then went on to play in the bowl game, and sure, you lost, right? We lost. There's no getting around that. But there were some positives out of that. I thought, kind of going back to it, I saw the ability to stretch the field vertically on a level that I didn't feel like we saw with Carson Beck, but even before he got hurt, right? I'm going to tie that off to come back to this. When you add the speed and the size of the receiving core from the guys through the portal, not only the portal, but you bring in, Landon Rolden from the 25 class. And now you're looking at the 26 class. You've got Marchese, right? You've got the speed, right? Georgia's in a really good spot for Craig Dandridge. And I think that right there is going to be nuts if Georgia lands that commitment. And I think he announces in like 12 or 13 days from right now.
What stands out about Craig Dandridge to you, and what do you think he would bring to the table for this team?
First, I love his work ethic and what you show on tape. I love his twitch. I want to see what your thoughts are, but I love his twitch and just a ball player. I love it.
There's one thing that stands out to me. Heart. All heart. And the reason I say all heart is because the competitor that he is. I like to see a guy face adversity when he gets beat on a play, or he has somebody that's beating on him. It's easy to look good when you're cooking somebody that's not a good football player. It's easy to look good against a guy that might not have your skill set. I want to see what you look like when somebody hits you in your chest and gives you a snot bubble, as we would say, being a former player. How do you respond to that? How do you respond to you getting cracked in the jaw by a safety that catches you on the block? Do you get up? Do you kind of cower away? Or do you keep coming at him just as hard as you did the play before? I think this kid has a competitive edge outside of the twitch and a toughness that no one talks about. That's something that if you look at the footage, look at how he fights. That's something that I respect wholeheartedly, because we have to, if we're going to have this Georgia culture, I want our defensive culture to move over to the offense, and I want some toughness over here, because I'm just going to say it. Offensive line was soft last year. We were soft in the running game. We weren't tough. We were soft with a capital T at the end. If we can bring a toughness back to the offensive side of the ball, I think that we will win a hell of a lot more games this year than we did last year. I got us going, being honest, the worst is 10-2, but if you have a toughness with this offense, 11-1. 11-1. That's what I got.
I look at that though, man. Like, I'm not getting into that just yet for me specifically, because there comes a time when that needs to be done on the show and dedicated solely to that, because I want to break that down a ton more than just what we're doing there.
Mm-hmm.
But again, I just look at it like the inefficiencies that we had last season was far from the standard. And honestly, when you listen to the spring through spring and how Kirby's handled the media so far to this point in comparison to last season, you get that feeling that the old Kirby's kind of back, and that means there's no bullshit. It's strictly business, which leads me to question why he felt that change. Like what made that change? He was a lot calmer and stuff like that. So, was it just adaptability, or was it just the team wasn't built like that? Makes you wonder.
In my opinion, I think that the team might have not been built like the teams in the past that were off of toughness. And then you have to think about it. Kirby also has new staff members there. He has to get used to working to those guys, because let's be real. Everybody knows working for Kirby Smart is not easy, just like playing for him isn't. You have to be willing to work, and you have to understand that the standard that he has set at Georgia and the Presidents it's not gonna backtrack. And he made that apparent at the end of the season, even though we won the SEC championship game, and he said it was the best coaching job he had. There was a disappointment that he also had, if you listen to the press conferences, when he has a standard for this team, but he adapted like a chameleon. So he understood that this team was not built like those teams from the past, to where he could just get on guys. But I think he's getting ready to go back to the old Kirby, is what we saw. Hollering and kicking ass.
If that happens, I feel sorry. You make that change on top of all the doubt that Georgia's been getting so far this off season, buddy, shit's about to get nasty. But I want to transition. There are official visits taking place right now. while we're live on a Friday night. Let me break you a list of some notable names that are in Athens right now. Jared Curtis, Tyler Atkinson, Derek Cooper, Vance Spafford, Zach Fort. That's just a few. Brett Kaloji's had one. The list, there's a decent list there too. This list could be the most important week of all the OVs. Care to take a guess why?
I don't want to assume and look like the first three letters of the word assume. So I'm gonna let you have that one. I want you to break that down for me.
Well, I look at it this way, right? Tyler Atkinson, so far, if you listen to social media and you listen to Georgia fans talking, Georgia fans are writing him off to Ohio State, to Oregon. And I understand it, but I have to kind of bring it back a little bit. You hear this, he's about the money, it's about NIL and this and that. If that's the case, why hasn't he already committed to Oregon or committed to Ohio State yet? He could if it was about the NIL. Not saying he will or won't. Not saying he will or won't. But as long as he hasn't committed, Georgia's still going to be in this. Right? You bring in that fact right there. Right? He's in town. And you put Jared Curtis recruiting him. I like to hear those conversations. I would love to hear those conversations. I would love to hear that.
For me, I would say everybody has to understand Tyler Atkinson, this young man, not only is a good football player, he'll be playing on Sundays, he's also a businessman, and he understands that there's a game that has to be played outside of the regular game that he plays that's going to get him a scholarship and get him to the point of trying to get to the NFL. He's understanding the fact that he's trying to set up business outside of the game so he can have funds coming in. And you have to understand, he's preparing himself for the long-term game when he gets to the National Football League, if he stays healthy enough. But I don't blame him or his family for taking care of business and making sure that you do it the right way. Find out who's willing to give you the opportunity to not only be a good football player, but also to be an entrepreneur. And that's something that I think is also just as critical as him knocking out quarterbacks on Saturdays, because you can't play the game of football forever. So this kid is understanding.
Other time stays undefeated.
We're understanding that right now. But but I think Atkinson is a guy that you can't write off. And when I look at him play, I see speed, I see power, I see dominance, I see a high football IQ.
He's a freak. He's a freak.
If I had to compare him, and a lot of Dawg fans are gonna get mad when I say it, is like I talk old school football all the time, and yeah, I'm talking about an old Florida Gator linebacker. I hate the Gators, I despise them. But if you actually take the number off the back and you get Wilbur Marshall, who played for the Bears back in '85, how he was knocking out quarterbacks, how he was all over the place, how he could cover and run. Put Tyler Atkinson next to that guy, and you literally see the game. Or, hell, I'll even give you Thomas Davis, one of our Bulldog legends that did well in the NFL at that linebacker spot. I can see a lot of Thomas Davis in this kid, where he's a game changer.
I even look at, it's a different beast, right? Like when you watch his tape, it's awesome. It's awesome. But I think the narrative from Georgia fans' perspectives, you hear these comments, it's like, oh, he's all about NIL. It's all about his brand and this and that. If it was all about the brand, he would be committed to Oregon. But he's not committed yet. He's waiting down, and he's on your campus, right? He's on our campus right now. He's acting up in Athens right now. We talk about the long haul, right? Think about this. What is one way to build your brand and make a lasting legacy? Think about that. Keep that in mind. I'm going to give you the answer. Become the best linebacker that you can be at the collegiate level, transition, get drafted to the NFL, and have a sustainable career to build your brand in the meantime. Where else can you do that besides Georgia? Where else is better than Georgia for a linebacker?
Outside of Georgia, let's be honest. I can't say I'll say this here, and I'm not a fan of their program, but you look at Ohio State. They put a lot of guys in the NFL at that linebacker position. That's another school that, they develop linebackers, but they don't develop them like we do. And you can see that, and then the other school I would have to say is another opposition, Alabama. That is another school that puts out linebackers. And again, when you look at Tyler Atkinson, he's a guy that fits what we do here at Georgia. I understand he's exploring his options. He's on campus right now. But my sales pitch would be to Tyler is, listen, you have a chance to play at any other school. But the thing that's going to separate you here is this. You have a brotherhood and a lineage of linebackers that have come out of this program. And what they're going to do is impart the wisdom on you on not just surviving at Georgia, but to being an elite talent at Georgia and putting yourself in a position to have financial gain in the future, whether that be business with endorsements or whether that be with your play on the field and setting you up to be a first round pick, because the kid has first round talent and he could possibly be a Butkus Award winner. That's what I see from Tyler Atkinson.
I'm looking at it this way, right? Again, you talk about wanting to build your brand and sustain that brand, right? Mm-hmm. LeBron James didn't build his brand in high school. I don't even follow basketball, but you get where I'm about to be going with this. It took it took a long time of sustained greatness to do it. Right? He just went to the league, right? But again, you look at these situations, Georgia, the lineage of linebackers, you turn on an NFL game right now, and a high-level NFL game, you're looking at a Georgia linebacker.
Yep.
Roquan Smith.
Quay Walker.
Nakobe, hell, crazy to think about this. You're up in this area. Smile Mondon's getting first team reps right now.
Yep. You got Nakobe Dean, and here's the thing: Nolan Smith is used as an edge and a linebacker in Philly. So when you look at the type of guys that we've been putting out for years, I mean, Randall Godfrey, Thomas Davis. I mean, unfortunately, we had guys that got injured, but hey, we have produced linebackers at a high volume, even going back to the Mark Richt days.
Mm-hmm. That ain't going to stop. Now, I do see Motivated Dedicated here says, with regards to Atkinson, he thinks Clemson might be a threat too.
Yeah, and that's another
Dabo does know how to recruit. Yeah, to that point, you're not wrong. I think every school has a shot. Now, the question is, what does he value? This is the guessing game, right? It's just a guessing game. Yeah. But if I'm Georgia, I'm looking at the fact that it's not a guaranteed thing. Please, for the record, understand this. He's visited Athens like 20 times.
He grew up in.
I see it as a double-edged sword, though. Well, I'm gonna pull a little devil's advocate on this as well. If he has visited your campus that much, that's never a bad thing. But it is a bad thing because if he's been there 20 times and still hasn't committed yet, what's going on? So I can see both sides of the argument. I see both sides of the argument. No, that's more like what's going on, but I'm throwing devil's advocate there. So I get both sides of that.
So here's a question I got for you. When you say devil's advocate, how do you feel now? Clemson is really a threat because they have a sweet spot in Georgia when it comes to recruiting players, especially defensive players. But when you see the linebackers that they have that's there, you got Sammy Brown there, who's definitely an elite talent at linebacker. His little brother just committed.
Max, yeah.
What makes and that's the thing. When you look at how Clemson has kept linebackers stacked in that system since Dabo Swinney got there and when he had Brett Venables coaching up under him, do you think the quality of linebackers at Clemson can be on par with what we have at Georgia that's going to the NFL? Because they do develop linebackers there, by the way.
They do. I just question the quantity. Right. I think you're going to get now under Venables. You knew what you were getting. Hard-nosed, physical, disciplined linebacker. When I look at Sammy Brown, I think he fits them way better than what he does at Georgia, simply because he's better vertically. He's a linear guy. What I mean by that is think about this, right? When we go back to that class, you miss on Sammy Brown, but you end up getting Justin Williams and Chris Cole. And both of those guys can do something that he can't do as good, and that is sideline to sideline coverage.
Yep.
Lateral movement. So
Sammy's a traditional middle back.
Turn the game on. Turn the Clemson game on. Watch their defense when he swarms up. When he gets up the field, that motherfucker closes. But when you have to worry about going sideline to sideline and you try and play in the scheme to have to cover, you have to have that lateral movement. And Cole and Williams are just better at that specifically. Justin Williams can close like nobody's business, by the way. Closing speed is insane. And then Chris Cole can cover nobody's business too. So you do both of those things.
And the other thing they bring to the table that is continuing with the Georgia linebackers is they bring a mean streak to the table. This is something that no one's talking about, that these guys, they don't mind hitting folks. They don't mind taking a penalty to set the tone if they hit somebody. You know what I mean? Or they throw somebody down a little too rough. I'm okay with that. You know what I mean? Because to me, I feel like the linebackers are your enforcers. They're pretty much like the warden, and then you got your second running mate in the secondary with their safety spot. Those are your mobile linebackers, but Georgia linebackers are bred differently.
They really are. I think you have to look at that when it comes to Tyler Atkinson, though, and I'm curious to see what Georgia's pitch will be now that he's on an official visit, right? Listen, we talk about a lot of recruiting, right? How recruiting, the momentum and stuff like that. But there's also something that's going to benefit Georgia, in my opinion. And that was the House Settlement last Friday getting pushed through and approved. Now let's talk a little bit about that. We ain't going to talk a ton about it because it's still super new and it doesn't take place until July 1st. But to me, I feel like this should benefit Georgia. Now, the question is, my first thought and my immediate response is watch these elite players get deals signed immediately before that July 1st. However, there was some news that broke since talking about deals before June 7th can get impacted with that clearinghouse. And stuff after that involve payments after will go through the clearinghouse. And so any NIL deal over $600 will go through this clearinghouse for approval. And so we don't necessarily know just what's going to happen yet. I think you can hear one thing, but you have to watch what happens. Because the NCAA can say this and say that, but then when they act upon it, they don't. And you're sitting there with shit in one hand and roses in the other, and they're not the same. They're just not. But what are your thoughts on the House settlement?
I think this pretty much sets it up to where it's going to be a level playing field, to where you're not going to see a lot of kids getting that. They're still going to get, money, but you're not going to see like a lot of backdoor last minute deals at the drop of a dime. Because now that you're going to have to go through a clearinghouse for that, especially if a kid makes a decision on something, they're going to be stuck with it now. That's pretty much how that's going to be. And now Kirby can kind of relax and not stress as much. He still got to stress because flips are going to happen all the time, but you don't have to worry about shady backdoor deals that can go on like they've been going on like
at the 11th hour.
Exactly. So, like, I'll put it this way. The situation with Elijah Griffin does not happen if this was already in place. Does not happen.
I mean, we'll see. I'm not holding. I have good faith that regulation can bring some good things, but I also know human nature and our ability to work around rules. Right?
It's always a loophole.
Well, no, think about it. We've done every kid. It starts out as a kid. Everybody does this shit when you're a kid, and some people adhere, some people don't.
Yeah,
it's human nature. To you don't like being told what to do. You're gonna find a way to benefit off of it. It's just what people do. Now the question is, how long is it going to take for a loophole to get found? And I don't think it'll take long, honestly. But the question is the regulation, now that the government got involved, right? How hard are they going to be regulating this? That's we don't know. And I don't think we're going to know until after it comes into effect in July. Well, but I'm gonna say this though. As it stands right now, it does bode well for Georgia because I think at the time it can force relationships and development to mean a little bit more, which could in turn be the deciding factor in some recruitments that in the past couple of years we've gotten bid in the ass for. Justice Terry, Jackson Cantwell, Mark Bowman.
And I'm gonna correct myself. I meant Justice Terry, not Elijah Griffin. Y'all got to forgive me.
I was thinking that was
a slip. That was a slip of the tongue, y'all. I apologize for that. But
for the record, it has been corrected.
Yeah, I'm I can put it out there because I have to do it on my show too, every once in a while. But all I'm saying is, Terry would be here in Athens right now if Texas wouldn't have backdoored it. I'm not, we can't cry about it. We can't sit there and worry about spilt milk. It happens. You're not going to get everybody. But the question is, when you're starting to get certain elite talent and you get a kid to lock in or whatnot, are we going to be able to maintain it? Because again, like you said, it might not even be the money. It's the relationship that you have with them. Because every kid is different. Because let's be honest, I'm gonna tell you the honest to God truth, and we're veterans, so we can talk about it. It's just like a military recruiter. Guess what's gonna happen? They're gonna get you in the door. They're going to talk to you about everything that you can get, and
they're gonna smoke up your ass.
Yeah, they're gonna blow it up. They're gonna blow smoke, and this is what recruiting is, ladies and gentlemen. It's
travel the world.
Nothing to be surprised. This is just what it is. You can go, and I'm just using the military because that's pretty much exactly what they're doing to get a quota of personnel to get to the service. Same thing with football. You're trying to get a quota and a personnel to fit your talent. To fit your program. You're going to have guys that are the talented guys that you're bringing in. And let's be honest, you're going to have the guys that are going to be the practice squad guys that you're bringing in as well, that are great in high school, but you don't think that they're going to transition. Now, it's up to them to transition to the collegiate level and make it happen. So their job is just to get you in the door. Once you're in the door, all the sweet talking and sweet nothings go out of the window until the end of the season when they have to sweet talk certain players. That's just how that goes. So recruiting is just nothing but a verbal game to make guys feel great. That's all it is, just to break it down. Nothing special about it. Everybody does it. And everybody cheats at it too, by the way.
You can travel the world. You can go wherever you want to. Yeah. Yeah. If you're a veteran and you heard those during your recruiting pitch before you went to MEPS and stuff, please let us know.
Don't remind me, because
brother,
here's the other one.
Here's the other one.
We think about it. We get NIL. People don't understand this. When they say we got bonuses for signing bonuses for certain jobs, guess what? That is what we call an NIL deal. So NIL deals they've been around forever, because they tell you, well, this is what we can offer you. You come in, we can move you up in rank. When we say move up in rank, that's like getting your playing time. And this is what else we can offer you. We can offer you a bonus of $20,000 or $40,000 or whatnot. Now, they're not going to tell you that it's going to get taxed. They don't tell you that. You think you're getting it all up front, and you don't. But I mean, it's the same way with what's going on with the Dawgs right now in college football. We're going to tell you everything you can make. You got a chance to come in here. You can start, or you're going to get some playing time. You can make some money right now with some of our boosters, our donors, blah, 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 blah. Here's the other thing that we can promise you. You'll have a shot to make it to the NFL. We'll make sure that we develop you and give you every opportunity. Now, I don't know what their pitch is. I'm just throwing this out here, but this is how they get you in the door. Hey, just like a recruiter, they call us 2-3 times a week. Understand this. When you getting through a recruiter's door, they're going to consistently call you. And then we say, no, I don't want to go here. They're still going to call you. Hey, what's going on? I'm just checking on you just to see if your mind might have changed. Listen, I can sweeten the deal for you to get you through the door. I mean, this is how it works. Once you get through that door, it's done deal. On to the next.
Hey, does this sound familiar? You got a test good enough for them to really put the effort in.
Yeah. Hey, we need you. Look, if you can get through MEPS and you get through MEPS or whatnot, and you can pass the entrance test, like they go test you before you get out there.
The ASVAB. I was talking about the ASVAB, but yeah.
Oh, I'm talking, but you got to remember too, some recruiting offices, they got guys that they actually watch, they take to the track and let them run to see if they actually can qualify too.
Yeah. Well, no, I mean, because like, I love how a Georgia Bulldogs podcast just turned into a veterans recollection story, but it translates over, folks. I promise.
I apologize.
Just track with us, okay? First thing, you gotta be smart, right? I'm telling you. So you know this, but I did recruiter's assistance. So I was in the recruiter's office as an enlisted, watching the recruiters work and doing different things with them. When I said people think that it's easy to do the ASVAB. Dude, I've seen some scores that will blow your mind. I don't even know how somebody did this, but they pulled a 2. Like you didn't even. Did you not put your?
You didn't even put your name on the paper.
You didn't put your name on it. You get points just for putting your name on the test. But then there comes a lot of the prerequisites, right? Health, background check, all that stuff. Nonetheless, though, recruiting is a very complex thing. But everybody has a different pitch, right? Air Force, get told different things. Army, they're going to tell you whatever the fuck they can to get you to come be in that United States Army, son. That's a fucking fact. I know it. But I would go into the Air Force office, and the Army guys were like, why are you going into that office? I'm like, because I'm smart. And they looked at me like, we're smart too. I'm like, sure you are. Looking back on me now, that was a very dumb thing to say at that moment. But I was trying to crack a joke as well, though. I mean, to be fair, I was already in when I said it.
Oh, so it wasn't a dumb thing to do, because at the end of the day,
hold on. I say that, but I'm talking like I sworn in, but I was waiting to go to basic.
Oh man,
I wasn't in.
Oh,
but
so
I was
you didn't even have your stripes yet. Oh
no, but I was 18 years old and didn't care. I was like, I'm not joining the army. I did my research. I'm not doing that. Like, I'm not dumb. I'm not dumb. I did my research. But yeah, looking back on that, I could have handled that slightly different.
I can't.
The funny thing was I went home for Christmas and went back up to the recruiter's office and I told him I apologize for the comment.
What did he say to you?
He's like, I get it. I was like, no, I really wanted to make sure you understand. I was trying to crack a joke, but I also realized I didn't earn it yet. So I just want to make sure, like, you see that I earned it, but I apologize for saying it prematurely.
Your experience was different from mine. I had a bad run-in with a Navy recruit. That pissed me off. Like, oh yeah, I don't care. I stand on it or whatnot. And I wish y'all would say I'm fake military, because guess what? My DD 214 and my VA status says otherwise. U.S. Coast Guard veteran right here, by the way. I go in, and it's crazy how it happens. And, I actually was gonna try to go to the Navy or whatnot, listening to my
Your Homeland Security, not even DOD.
Let's get this straight. Outside of the National Guard, my branch of service is older than all y'all's. Just saying.
I know.
So yeah. So show some respect to your elders.
Fuck that. No.
I'm just messing with you. It's okay. We listen. We actually know what it looks. We actually know what it's like to go through boot camp and not have a dessert tray that we can eat from, where we actually got to eat just whatever's thrown out there, and we're not eating sweets. Chair Force. Don't think I forgot about that.
Nah, listen.
But
that might not be what you're expecting.
The recruiting officer told me that I wasn't good enough. He said, "Oh, you're not good enough for my service." I'm like, man, I got one of the highest ASVAB scores in here. Literally, not even just in this office. The Army was trying to call me, and so was the Marine Corps. And the Navy. And what was ironic was my dad's best friend, he went from green to blue. So he went from enlisted in the Army and then went to the Navy and became a SWO officer. So surface and warfare officer. He was in charge of vessels that had ammunition and so many other things. But just make sure y'all knew what that meant. He went up there. He said, "Hey, I told him to come up here. And you told him he wasn't what?" And he was retired at the time. And he was like, "Well, I felt like," he says, No. You don't turn down somebody with an ASVAB score like that. And also, he pretty much, you had him to go to the track and he literally blew everything out of the water that you asked him to do. And you say that for him? He said, okay. And, my uncle, I call him my uncle, but he reported it. And let's just say the chief called me back and I wasn't even in yet, like probably a week before I left. And he apologized to me and then tried to get me to come back and tried to take me to a steakhouse to make it up to me.
Oh, brother, you about to get shit.
Man, I'm going to tell you the truth. I took that free meal off of him, though.
Man, if you go to a steakhouse on the military dime, shit, that's a big deal.
Man, I was crushed because I said it was either going to be the Army or the Marines, but my old football injury stopped that. And so it was just like wanting to follow after my pops and my uncle. My uncle is he's not dead yet, so he was prior Marine, and he was just like, "Don't go." He just flat out told me, "Don't go. It's not for you." He said, "You not saying that you can't do it, but I know it's not for you." So
yeah,
I listen.
The funny thing is, we just sat here, probably spent 10 minutes talking military source. Guys, just keep in mind, recruiting is the same thing, regardless it's football or military. You're going to hear a bunch of shit that's probably not true, but you got to decipher what is and what's not.
And they're going to sweeten the deal. And here's the thing. They're going to sweeten the deal up for certain people, just like your 5 stars. Think about it. Your 5 stars are the guys that they're going to take to dinner, like, because they do this. Some recruiters will take guys to get food. Red Lobster, you might go to certain places, or they might get a guy to take them to McDonald's. That's your 2 stars right there, depending on if they like you. If they don't, they're just going to give you a pamphlet and just tell you, "Hey, man, come." That's your walk-ons, the ones that they kind of turn down.
Never in my wildest dreams would I envision trying to translate military into football talk, but here we are. I ain't even mad at it.
But just think about it. The game of football.
No, you're right.
Just think about it. I mean, think about it. The game of American football was designed for, and a little history fact, it was designed for military officers to stay in shape while they were in college. And this started back in the Ivy Leagues before all the big time schools got those programs or whatnot. So a lot of those officers were understanding that an injury is a casualty when you have a guy to go down. They're understanding that they have to change, pretty much make changes within the game. You make your adaptations to the game or whatnot in different situations. You learn how to function. That was what they used to do for the old officers that were coming out of Ivy League schools back in the day. And in this history, you can actually look it up because they talked about it on ESPN's development of college football, and that was something that I learned. I thought it was pretty cool.
Yeah. All right, let's do this. Let's take all of this information. It's been a lot. And let's go back and fit our final thoughts on this.
Bet.
Final thoughts for me, Georgia's recruiting so far through June has been off the wall, but we ain't done yet. And June we always look for that one specific month where the shit gets turned up. And I think you're in it. I think we've talked about the list of recruits that have recently committed, shut down their recruitments. Listen, you're probably about to get a few more here soon. Definitely before the end of the month. Probably 2 or 3 easily before the end of the month. So it ain't done yet. It's not done yet. And then it trickles into July. But then, you go from there. What are your final thoughts, boss man?
I'll say it like this. The recruitment pictures are showing these guys in the studio pretending like they're making music or whatever. But you know what? As you said, it's a classic. And I'm going to even go back for my old school music lovers. Guess what? It's kind of like that Off the Wall album that Michael Jackson did late 70s, early 80s. Still a classic album to this day that consistently is in rotation. And he made tons more of music that had the world snapping during his time. Kirby Smart's doing the same thing right now. You got that off the wall type of aurora about yourself. You've put out a lot of classics since you've been at Georgia. Guess what? The hits don't stop coming, and you keep coming forward. As Michael would say, don't stop till you get enough. We haven't got enough, so we damn sure ain't stopping.
That's the perfect way to end it. But before we do, we got to make an announcement. EA Sports College Football brought forth the news that schools will be getting paid for usage from their fans on the video game. And so with that being said, in the chat, we are entering to win a free copy of EA College Football 26. Go to our Twitter or X account page and go to our profile and enter to win using the pinned post. Winner will be determined. We will announce it on July 4th. That's right before the game comes out. July 10th for standard, and then if you could actually get it 3 days early for the deluxe, if I'm not mistaken. So the more engagement on that post, if we get over 1,000 comments, we'll change it from the standard to the deluxe edition. But only if there's enough, and the post does say that too, but we make sure just go do what the post says to enter to win a free copy of the game. But with that being said, that's all I've got for tonight. Ryan, thank you for coming on, sir.
Thank you for having me, sir. Definitely
Absolutely.
Appreciate you always inviting me to come in here and talk dog football and take a break from my Falcons, man.
Absolutely. With that being said, though, folks, that's all we've got for the night. For this episode of the DGD Podcast, I'm your host, Robert Reynolds. Have a great morning, evening, afternoon, whenever you're watching or listening. We'll catch y'all next time. Go Dogs.
Go Dogs.